Welcome, everyone, to our Sunday Wisdom sessions. If you recall, last week, we spoke about the quality of by whom the world is not agitated. Somebody who does not agitate the world. And we said the essence of this quality is consideration. Seeing how we can be considerate, kind, not harmful, as we proceed with our goals, as we proceed with our mission in life, that we can be focused, it can be done in such a way with as little disturbance to those around us. And that was the theme of last week's session. Now, this quality goes hand in hand with it. And I'll put it up on the screen for you. It's our 14th quality as we proceed through the 35 qualities of a bhakta, a devotee of God. And this one goes hand in hand with last week's one. Here, it says, one who is not agitated by the world. Lokat Na Udvijate Yah. Yah, one who is not agitated by the world. So, if we follow last week, we make a great effort not to disturb others, not to hurt others, not to offend, not to be insulting to others. This is great. Good progress. Wonderful. But then on the other side of it, we get so hurt, so affected by what others say. We get so involved in what's happening in the world. When we see what's going on in politics, when we see the different decisions being made, we get so worked up by it. Why? And this quality is as important as the earlier quality. It's not being affected, not being agitated by the world. So, as you've seen in the pattern of our sessions, we're going to deep dive into this quality. We're going to take the words apart. We're going to analyze it word by word, and then come out with the takeaways of how we can apply this quality to not be agitated by what happens in the world. And then we're going to take up the question of the week. And then the latter part is for the open Q&A. So as we go through the session, please make a note of your questions. You can also put it in the chat. I can read through it at the later part of the session. So let's begin with some theory. What is the definition of agitation? How is agitation caused, anyone? We know what it feels like. We know the symptoms of it. We call it stress. We call it agitation. What is the definition?
Agitation is caused when our desire is interrupted.
Interrupted. Not just interrupted. Just before that, as long as the desire is unfulfilled, you have agitation. So the definition of agitation is that it is caused by unfulfilled desire. When do we experience its opposite? Pleasure. When our desire gets fulfilled. But as long as that desire remains unfulfilled, it causes agitation. And depending how badly you want to fulfill it, that much agitation. So for instance, you may be feeling for a snack. Where? During the class. And you're trying to focus on the class, but you're thinking of, I'm feeling for something savory, some crisps. And you're thinking crisps. So what's happening is you've got a desire right now for chips, crisps, potato chips. And the mind starts going, chips, chips, chips. This is the agitation. It's going chips, chips, chips. Now, if it is just a small desire, it is less agitation. Only now and then it's going chips, chips. When? During the session. But if it's a medium desire, the mind starts repeating chips, 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 chips. And if it's a very strong desire, chips, 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 until a point you can no longer concentrate. You're not hearing me. Your mind is just shouting chips. So what do? You put your video off, and hopefully the sound as well. You get a packet of chips and you're munching on the chips. And what happens? Shanti, peace. Why? Desire fulfilled temporarily. So depending on the strength of the desire and it being unfulfilled, so will be the strength of your agitation. The stronger the desire unfulfilled, the stronger the agitation. If you don't get what you want, it's okay. But if you really want that and you don't get it, you will be upset, miserable, stressed, agitated. Now, when we say being agitated by the world, what does this mean? So the first is, it could mean that we have worldly desires. So we have unfulfilled worldly desires. And this is why we get agitated. So we're just using the same theory. Unfulfilled desire causes agitation. If I'm agitated by the world, it's because I have worldly desires. Simple. What's the solution, anyone? What's the solution? If you have worldly desires and worldly desires cause you agitation, what
Reduce
do
the
you
desires.
Detachment.
Reduce the desires. Yes.
Detachment.
Detachment. Excellent. Epicurus, he's got a beautiful quote. He says, if you want to be happy, if thou wilt make a man happy, add not unto his riches, but take away from his desires. So we've got to reduce the worldly desires to reduce our agitations from the world. So simple. But how do you reduce your desires? This is the tricky part. You've got to not give up those desires. Some desires we can give up in the world. For instance, if we just examine and we look at our mind, we do a stock take. Just as if you were to go into your cupboard and you go through your cupboard, have a look at what you've not worn for the last 1 year. What is it doing sitting in your cupboard? Because if it's sitting in your cupboard unused, it means you don't really need it. You've not used it for 1 year. All the seasons have gone by. You don't really need it. Give it away. Declutter. Get rid of it. Clear up the space. Easier to find things. Easier to know what you have, what you don't have. Same thing we can do with our mind. We can declutter our mind. And we're not saying give up things that you want. We're saying go through your mind, like your cupboard, and examine which desires do I have? Which desires are actually useful? Which desires are not useful? Do I really need a winter jacket? You know, the ones that are really fluffy, really thick when you live in the Sahara. Not necessary. So I like winter fashion, but I never go to a country where it snows. So why do you need that jacket? Give it off. So, or if you have a desire for something that you don't really need, close the desire. So what starts happening is straight away, you're able to close desires, which just a little bit of intellectual scrutiny, a little bit of intellectual examination, just asking the question, do I need it? Is it useful? Out, out. Declutter your mind. Straight away. They may not be taking up that much noise in terms of agitation. They're small desires, but they're accumulating the noise in your head that's keeping us awake. So what we're doing there is we're keeping the essential desires that we decide are important, which I need, but the non-essential desires, which I'm just allowing to occupy bandwidth, to occupy mind space, take up noise, close. So yes, we can reduce our desires, as Epicurus mentions, and immediately experience a lightness, a clarity. Now, when it comes to the other desires that are much stronger, these are far more difficult to tackle. And these ones you can't just drop. So if you have a strong desire for, it could be Italian food, it could be travel, you can't just say, okay, I dropped this desire. And then I won't be agitated because I don't have the desire anymore. You may drop not traveling, but the desire still lingers in your mind. You will be dreaming about travel. That is not the way to go about it. And the way to go about it is find a higher desire. Find a desire that interests you more than your current worldly desires. And this is where having an unselfish goal or a spiritual goal, seeking the self, the spirit within rather than the world outside, having these goals, this knowledge, reduces the worldly desires. There's a poem that we study. How many of you have heard of The Village Preacher by Oliver Goldsmith? Yeah, all the senior students. So The Village Preacher talks about a wonderful human being who has all these values. And whilst he is very much in the world, helping the villages, helping the people in his congregation, his community, he has higher values. He's thinking about the higher. He's thinking about the spirit. He's thinking about God. And those are where his thoughts primarily are, as he does his worldly duties. And it talks about this village preacher lives very frugally, comfortable, but doesn't need too much. And different trends, different fashions come and go. And, you know, it's interesting to see the different ages. You can see it in the style of pants, fashion-wise, how different types of pants come and go. You can see it in glasses, your spectacles, the different frames, heavy, sometimes rimless, different fashions, different trends. But this village preacher, he's timeless. He's got his cloak. He's got his outfit. He doesn't see the need to change. And he says this, why is it that he's not interested in all the trends and fashions, doesn't have those worldly desires? Why is it? It is not because they don't know the difference in value, the difference in quality, doesn't know what's going on in the world. They have higher interests. And Oliver Goldsmith describes it beautifully. He says, far other aims his heart had learned to prize, more skill to raise the wretched than to rise. So he found a higher goal in helping others. And because he had a higher goal in helping others, he didn't have such personal, worldly, material desires. This is it. And when you have this mindset, similarly in Othello, there's a scene where Othello says, who steals my purse steals trash. Suppose somebody steals your wallet. Now, one part is the inconvenience of it. I would say someone stealing the phone is probably more inconvenient. But just the inconvenience of canceling credit cards, yes, okay. We can understand the inconvenience of it. But what is the agitation level when something like that happens? Suppose it's just cash. Othello's saying, who steals my purse steals trash. Means I've got far, far higher values. It's okay. Not that you drop your wallet everywhere or you're not mindful where you keep it or you're careless. Not that. But in terms of value, I'm okay. Because you have higher values. So the best way of tackling or not being agitated by worldly desires is to pitch up higher desires. Change your values. And you find your agitations will become less. This is it. Now, a person who is pursuing the highest self-realization, spiritual enlightenment, absolute peace, fulfillment, or has reached self-realization, what will their state of mind be?
In our context, zero agitation.
Zero agitation. Can they be agitated by the world? So a person who's highly evolved, whose interest is in the self or is self-realized, has attained godhood, can that person be agitated?
No.
No.
They cannot be agitated by the world. Why? Because they do not have desires pertaining to the world. So for instance, today, and I don't mean to distract any of you, but today is the semi-final of IPL. It's the Indian Premier League. It's been going on for 2 months. So most of India is going to be watching this match. And for those of you who've not heard of IPL, like Dario, you've heard of IPL? There is no agitation whether one team wins or loses. Why? Because you have no desire for IPL, you have no desire for cricket, you don't even know what cricket is or care about. So because no desire, no agitation. Doesn't matter who wins or loses. So similarly, a person who's interested in the self, the spirit, they've got no desires for the world. So they do not care, or at least they're not agitated by what happens in the world. They could definitely have a preference. They would like things to go a particular way. They may support particular policies, but they're not agitated by it because their interest is different. This is the idea. Being self-realized means you're fulfilled. Nothing can interfere with that. Nothing can agitate you. What a state. But if you're not yet self-realized, it is possible to be agitated. How? If you're not yet. So suppose you're not 100% self-realization, where you're an enlightened soul, absolutely fulfilled, paripurna. Suppose you're at 90%. Why is it still possible to be agitated?
Because we haven't exhausted all the desires. We still have some.
And what desires would those be?
Desire to even get self-realized.
Excellent. So even the person at 90%, they are not agitated by the world, right? Because they don't have desires for the world. But what do they have desires for? They have desires to be a better person. They have desires to reach self-realization. They're thinking, why is this self-realization taking so long? I'm attending the sessions, I'm reading the books, I'm studying, I'm reflecting. Why is this self-realization taking so long? So they can be agitated, but not by the world. but by their spiritual desire, not worldly desire, spiritual desire. So as long as desire is there, there will be some agitation. But for that spiritual person, they are relieved from the agitations of the world because they no longer have worldly desires, worldly interests. There's another way of reading this statement. Who is not agitated by the world? So one we said is, you have worldly desire. That's the way you're agitated. The other is, you have a desire, okay, it's worldly, but it is obstructed by the world. The world does not give you what you desire. A person does not behave the way you want. So it is the world. And when we say the world is anything outside of you. So it's objects, but it's also beings, it's environments. So the world, when it stops you from getting what you desire, that causes you agitation. So the two aspects that I thought we could study here to give us more peace of mind, to reduce our agitations caused by the world. And the first is, with respect to people, how can we stop people from agitating us? How can we stop things happening in the news from agitating us? How can we stop the weather from agitating us? This year in India, we had the monsoon come early. So it caught people off guard. The rains came early, so not everybody was prepared. Agitation. How do you deal with these things? So this is where it is important to practice the intellectual discipline of seeing things as they are. What happens is when the mind has the desire, the mind puts up an expectation. The mind puts up the desire in the form of expectation. And we want people to behave according to what we like. This is a quality of the mind. So if we go back to the diagram that we always refer to, the body, mind, intellect, our BMI diagram, it is the mind that asserts what it wants, what it desires, what it likes and dislikes. So its version that it puts out into the world, this is what I like. This is what I desire. This is what I feel. This is what I'm attached to. This is the mind. But the intellect looks at the world objectively. This is what it is. You may like whatever you want, but this is what it is. You may like summer to be cooler, but this is the temperature, 27 degrees. You may like winter to be warmer, but this is what the temperature is, minus 10 degrees Celsius. So the mind, what it does is it puts expectations everywhere into the world. And when the world just does what the world does and doesn't fulfill that expectation or that desire, what do we experience? Agitation. Whose fault is it? It is not the world's fault. The world is just doing what the world does. But it is our expectation out of sync with the world, out of sync with reality, that causes the agitation that we experience. It is the mind's expectation versus the reality in front of you. And the easiest way to take care of this agitation is that when we meet the world, let us not meet it through our mind's like and dislike, through the mind's lens of desire. Let us meet people, beings, situations as they are. And in order to do that, our intellect needs to take a step back from the situation. The word objectivity means to stand outside of yourself and look at yourself as any other person or object. It lends you objectivity. You're able to see things clearly. But if you're involved, it means that you're seeing things through your mind's desire, expectation. You want the world to be a particular way. So you're trying to fit a square plug into a round hole. That's where you get the frustration, the agitation, the headaches. So simple. Assessment. Meet the world not with desire. Meet the world as it is. And you can have expectations, but let the expectations be based on reality rather than the mind's likes and dislikes and expectations. What does this mean? Simply put, your partner, and I know many of you married, you may have been trying to convey a point to your partner for 10, 20, 30 years. Your partner is not going to change, or it's definitely not going to change by your instruction, by your repetition, by your nagging. Yet we hold on to that hope. Why? Because our mind wants the partner to change. Think about how much agitation that causes, wanting the person to be different. That person will be what they're going to be. You might try to change an unpunctual partner into a punctual partner. It cannot be done by you unless that person wants to change themselves. You can't do it. You've got to wait for that person to want to change. And the more you approach the person with the idea that they should change, that you're waiting for them to change, the more friction, the more agitation. So what should we do? If we decided somebody is going to be in our life, accept that person as they are, because they have to express what their nature is. Just as we are not perfect, we're going to express what our nature is. We would like to be more consistent with our studies, with our exercise, be less impulsive, less selfish. We have all these things that we want to be. If we're not able to live up to what we would like to be, how can we expect another person? You see how egoistic, unreasonable it is? So all the advice here is meet people as they are, not as we would like it to be. That's it. And see the difference in your relationships. See the difference in the state of your mind. Peace. When we say accepting, you might find a negative quality in your partner or in someone else. It doesn't mean promote that negativity. It means understand that that person is both positive and negative. That's it. That person is a whole package. Now, don't get involved and start hating the negative or only loving the positive. That person is the whole package. And if that person is going to be in your life, accept the whole package. Even if they're not, we have no option but to accept. Nature is going to do what nature is going to do. So for instance, you approach a tiger. You might approach a tiger with all love and affection. A tiger is going to be a tiger. When you go to the tiger's cage, the tiger sees you. Perhaps it has some meat on one side of the cage. The tiger looks at the piece of meat, looks at you. It knows what fresh meat is and takes off your arm. Whose fault is it? You said, I went with all my affection. I said, yeah, kitty, kitty. And I went with all my affection to embrace the tiger and it took off my arm. What kind of animal is this? My intention was so pure, loving. It is your fault. It is your fault because you know the nature of a tiger is to be fierce and ferocious. a tiger will be a tiger. Similarly, amongst human beings, there are tigers. For those tigers, keep your distance. And there are those who are puppies. There you can love, hug, hold, express affection. But because of your desire to express affection to everybody, we're getting bitten by some, we're getting mauled by others, we're getting attacked. Similarly, you may be a very kind person, but the kindness has to be expressed according to who we're meeting. So for some, we're getting taken for granted. For some, we're getting abused. For some, we're getting used. For some, we're getting appreciated. We've got to customize it based on what's in front of us. Assessment. Albert Einstein says this: a man should look for what is. Man means this doesn't exempt women, right? It means all human beings. Human beings should look for what is and not what he or she thinks should be. So our mind wants to come with this judgment, ego as well. And we want to say, it should be like this. It should be like this. If you are going to meet or even try, attempt to correct the world or anything, first meet the world, meet people as they are. Such a practical way that we can practice immediately to not be agitated by the world. So the first one was, don't have worldly desires. Okay, easier said than done. Pitch up a higher goal. But this second one, we can practice right now. Well, not right now during the class. Maybe in your morning study tomorrow. Do an assessment of all the key people in your life. Do an assessment of your country. Do an assessment of the environment. So doing an assessment means, if you're doing an assessment of your son, my son is talented in sport. My son gets restless. He has a concentration span of about 30 minutes. My son gets stressed when there's a lot of pressure on him from school. My son is very sensitive to comments. So do the assessment. Now, what that does, and please, you don't have to show the person your assessment. This is for you. Because some of you, if you go and show your partner your assessment, you're going to be in trouble. My wife is very irritable. My wife wants me to do this. Now, if you go and show that, trouble. That assessment is for you to understand how to relate with that person better. So you know, if you're going to have a conversation with your son, and he's just done 30 minutes, 1 hour of homework, he's going to be tired, he's going to be restless. That is not the time to have a conversation with him. So beautifully you've adapted. You know what to expect. You know how to behave. Why? Because you've understood the person. Not through your mind's expectation, desire, but through your intellect's assessment of reality, objectivity. The diagram here shows this. It shows if there is a lack of assessment or a wrong assessment, means you just haven't analyzed the person, you haven't thought about it. You didn't know that a tiger was ferocious. You will have an unreasonable expectation. Now, why we use the word unreasonable is because nature is going to be nature. An unpunctual person is going to be unpunctual. A tiger cannot be gentle, at least with prey. So it's an unreasonable expectation. And because it's a wrong expectation, unreasonable, you're expecting a tiger to be affectionate, an unpunctual person to be punctual, you will be disappointed, stressed. If you're agitated, turn it around. What was my unreasonable expectation? What did I miss in my assessment of this person or this situation? Tinker, tinker, tinker. Refine with your intellect. Agitation can be solved just like that. We had a youth camp. I was telling those of you who tuned in early We just finished the youth camp. So we had 4 days of teenagers on campus at the Vedanta Academy. And we taught this section to the youth campus about assess the world as is. And they used this diagram. And one of the girls, she was battling with a friend from school. And she put this into action. So she woke up early in the morning, and for her morning study, she said, let me figure out how to deal with my friend. And it was incredible because she just spent the morning analyzing the friend. And having assessed the friend, she realized, I've been wanting my friend to be somebody different. It is not my friend's fault. It is my fault. I'm going to meet my friend as she is. I know what to expect. And immediately she said, agitation gone. And now she's looking for the next problem. And this is what we can do. We can look for the problems in our life and apply this assessment technique. See our agitations reduce. So a bhakta, a devotee of God, coming back. Why is it that they have such good assessment? Because they are looking for the truth. They are looking for the absolute truth, which is the self, but they're also looking for the truth here in the world. So they're seeing people as they are. They're seeing situations as they are. They're looking for truth, not just mind's desire. And the last one, on how we can reduce the agitations from the world, is let us stop depending on worldly results, worldly outcomes. Now, I'm not saying drop the desires. We've covered that. That's higher desire. But if you have a particular desire, let's focus on the effort that is going to take us to the fulfillment of the desire, rather than on the outcome. So what we do is, when we have a desire, we only want the fulfillment of it. We only want the goal. We only want the achievement. We don't want the journey. We don't want the travel. We just want to be there. And the trouble is with desire, once you get what you're looking for, the mind just pitches up another desire. So thought by thought, it's the intellect telling the mind, chill. I'm going to put in my effort to get what I'm trying to desire. I'm going to put in the effort. But let me stop obsessing about the result, because the result is not completely in your hand. There are other factors out there. And that is where the world has control. So if you give the peace of your mind to the worldly result, it becomes dependent on that particular result. You get what you want, happy. Don't get what you want, miserable. What kind of life is this? You're betting on the fulfillment of that desire. Place it on the journey. Place it on the effort. When it happens, we don't know. But when you place it on the effort, the desire is managed. But if you allow it to become obsession, you don't enjoy the journey. You start neglecting other aspects that are not connected to the desire. Let us focus on action alone. The Bhagavad Gita says, your right is in action alone, means on the present, not to the fruits, the future. Let go of the result orientation and see how less the world agitates you. Why? Because then you're in control. Why are you in control? Because you're in charge of your present action. But the future result, we don't know all the factors that are going into it. But if you place your happiness, your dependence on that future outcome, it's like gambling. Why do that? Take back the control. It's like a remote. Take back that remote of peace. Now you've given it to somebody else. So depending on that person's mood, they can make you smile. They can make you miserable. Depending on the stock market, it can make you go up, you go down with it. Take it back. Let me get my fundamentals right. Let me do the right action. When the desires get fulfilled, they get fulfilled. So this is the quality of not being agitated by the world. How? First, reduce the worldly desires. By examination, knowledge with the intellect, get rid of the non-essentials. Number two, pitch up higher desires. When your interests change for higher, lower drops off automatically. And then we said, spiritual desires is the highest. You're not agitated by the world because you're aiming for beyond the world. Then we said some practical advice. Let us use assessment instead of the mind's expectation. Meet the world as it is rather than how we want it to be, how we want a person to be. A will be A, B will be B, your daughter will be your daughter, your son will be your son. But we get into trouble when you want the son to be like the daughter or the first daughter to be like the third daughter. It cannot be. Tiger will be a tiger. Meet the world as it is. And the last one is put in our effort because that's in our control. Leave the results for the future to work out. Give up that obsession. Give up that craving for achievement, success. It'll come from your action. We don't know when. But if you're craving for the success, for the result, you will be agitated. And that's the quality for the week. Now, the question for the week. Excellent question. And this is why we chose it. It's on forgiveness, which we covered in our earlier sessions. It says, explain the concept of forgiveness. So for those of you who've not heard the quality earlier, we have made all the previous sessions available. So go back because there were some wonderful quotations. There was a wonderful analysis given. So please have a look at that. Now it says, it is said that we ought to forgive people. We are also told to act when righteousness is at stake. How does one assess in a conflict whether one should forgive or act? So there are some assumptions in this question because there's not a complete understanding of forgiveness. So here the person has understood forgiveness as just letting the person go, letting the person be. So what happens if a person is unrighteous? Oh no, I forgive them. Let them carry on with their unrighteousness. So the person's question comes from this incomplete understanding of forgiveness. It's saying, what happens in a situation where you're telling me I should forgive, but the person is unrighteous? There's a conflict. Now, what do I do? So let's examine what is forgiveness, first of all. Forgiveness is more the letting go of the feeling, of the negative feeling. And I'll put this up on the screen so you can take a screenshot of it because I've thought about the framing of it. Forgiveness is the conscious, deliberate decision. So when we say decision, which equipment are we using? Which part of the personality are we using?
Intellect.
Intellect.
Intellect, right? So you're not giving blindly. You're not giving with the mind just because we've been told by others that we should forgive or because it is something that's practiced in traditions or we feel that's what it means to be a good person. We're forgiving with the intellect. Forgiveness is the conscious, deliberate decision to release the feelings of resentment or vengeance towards a person or a group who has harmed ourselves. Okay, so let's digest that first of all. So we've experienced harm. We've experienced a negative action. And that person has performed a negative action towards us. But the reaction that we have towards that negative action is agitating us. So we're experiencing the hurt and we're getting re-injured or wounded over and over again. Now, hang on. If that person has committed something negative, they should be the one suffering, not us. It's like one person has had very spicy food and our stomach is burning. It doesn't make sense. So we decide with our intellect, this negative feeling is not healthy for me. That person, with their understanding of the world, with their education, has decided to act like this. That is their nature. A tiger will be a tiger. I am deciding to not hold on to this feeling. I'm letting this feeling go. What are you releasing? You're releasing the feeling of vengeance. You're releasing the feeling of resentment. You don't have negative feeling towards the tiger. You understand, yes, that's what a tiger will do. You don't feel, how can the tiger be so heartless and go and attack a harmless, beautiful deer? It's the tiger's nature. So you don't have any resentment, you don't have any vengeance. Tiger will be a tiger. Okay. A misguided person without these higher values, what will they do? They'll be misguided. They will be selfish. Okay. But now this is the second part, which is extremely important in our understanding of forgiveness and will help resolve the question. So if we can put it up on the screen again, it says, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness. So forgiveness is for you. It doesn't necessarily mean forgetting, excusing, or reconciling. That depends on the situation. So forgiveness is an internal quality to be practiced. Externally, however, you act as the situation demands. So if that person is unrighteous, they might need corrective measures. You may need to call the police. You may need to file a suit against them. You forgive them. You let go of the negative feeling. But you do what is required. So when our question is saying, how does one assess in a conflict whether one should forgive or act? It's not either or. You can do both. You can forgive and you can uphold righteousness. Forgiveness does not mean letting the person be free of consequences. You let go of the negative feeling and you fully go after the person legally because that person needs to be punished or that person needs to know for future. You've got to decide with your intellect. So just like giving, when we give, the mind must want to give, but the intellect must decide whether it's the right thing to do, when to do it, who to do it with. So giving must be an intellectual exercise. Same here with forgiveness. Mentally let go. But how you act or what you decide to do thereafter must be with the intellect. So forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. You've got to take that into consideration. You must assess the person better. So, very practical question for us. And that's why I brought it up, because all of us have been in a position where we've been hurt by someone. And forgiveness does not mean forgetting, does not mean passively accepting the person's behavior. It is intellectually understanding the other person and deciding for yourself that you need not hold on to that negative feeling. But going forward, you are wiser, you have a better assessment of that person's nature, and if required, you will know how to handle or correct that person's negative behavior. That's our question for the week. So now we take up your questions, open questions. So you can either unmute and ask your question, and then I'll go to the question submitted on the chat.
Dakachi, a quick one on this question itself. Regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness or not, can you just elaborate on this a little bit?
Sure. So often we think that we should only forgive those who have regret, or we should forgive those who... So suppose a person does not regret their action. Forgiveness is a quality of understanding for you. So it is from your side to decide to forgive. It is not about the other person. It's a letting go of your negative feeling. So we feel it's justified if the person says sorry to us. Right? So that's where we feel that there's a deserving. But it's not about the other person. It's about you and your understanding of that person and your understanding of the feeling that you're experiencing and why that feeling does not work for you. Sorry, Deepak Bhai, you're on mute.
Yeah, you may continue to feel that the other person's actions were unjustified and he should not have done it. Yet you choose to, yet you realize that, harboring the feelings of resentment, etc., are hurting you. They're interfering with you.
Yes.
They're causing you agitation. So you decide to release them. And then you take whatever action you need to take with respect to the situation.
That's it. So that's the beauty of this subject, Vedanta, is it comes back to you. So even in forgiveness, you're not giving the remote control to the other person. You're not waiting for them to come and do something redeeming. It's in your hands.
Sometimes it can happen. I'm moving to a slightly different direction on forgiveness, since that was the question of the week, that the other person has done something which you, in your interpretation, think that he was unfair and he was unjust. But actually what he may have done is correct, and you may be actually deserving of whatever unjust action he has done. Now, you don't realize that, and you may actually be sitting in a little bit of saying, okay, I don't want to carry any, vengeance and resentment, and you are forgiving. You're still missing the point that you actually may have actually deserved, or he may have been justified in causing you that hurt.
So the highest level of forgiveness is understanding. And the understanding is from that person's value system, from that person's mind and intellect, it is natural for them, what they did. So from that person's nature, of course they will behave like that. If a selfish person is put in a particular situation, naturally they'll do that. If an egoistic person is put in a situation where they can take the credit for work, which they didn't do, how can they avoid the temptation? So you understand. And when the understanding is complete, understanding means, it doesn't mean that you let the person take the credit depending on the situation. It means you understand their behavior from their perspective, from their nature.
Yeah.
But I'll move to the
that
next
links it up
question
with
now.
correct expectations also, that you would expect an egotist person to take it and, hog the credit, and therefore you should not be hurt about it. In any case, hurting is hurting you, so let it go.
That's the assessment. Assessment, And yes. So Dario, how does one deal with the mind's agitation that comes from an experience of overexposure to stimulus as a long day of tourism, exposure to so many new information, visual, and knowledge? This, Dario, needs self-assessment. And it's the self-assessment that your mind can only handle so much of stimulation in a day. So you've got to decide or plan your day accordingly. So for instance, if you know that you are going to be traveling through the streets of India and on the roads, you know that it is extremely stimulating. There is so much happening. There are so many sounds. There are so many sights. You see buffaloes. You see a family of 4 on a bike. I remember here in Pune, I stop at a traffic light and next to me, a motorbike pulls up, also stops, and gentleman is sitting in the front, and there's one gentleman in the back, and between them is a goat. And the goat's got its legs on either side, it's sitting between the men, and it's got its forelegs on top, and coolly it's looking at me as if I'm the strange one. So much going on, so much of stimuli. If you understand your mind's capacity, you will know that after that journey, give some space before you go to a dinner party or a lunch party where you're going to be dealing with different people. You need some time for your mind just to decompress, be quiet. And for some of you who have children who are like that, who are very sensitive to stimuli, we need to understand their personality and give the breaks. But because we don't have this self-assessment, we don't realize when it's too much. And then suddenly we become irritable. We have a meltdown just because the mind can't take it anymore. And it's both a physical and a mental capacity. So let us learn from these experiences and space out our day accordingly by assessing what kind of stimulating day it's going to be. So if you're doing a tourist day, mix the activities. So you can have like maybe 2 hours in the street where there's a lot happening, but then do something like a museum or a quiet lunch to give the mind time to recuperate, balance. Okay? Paresh. Not forgetting, excusing, or reconciling is often misunderstood as holding a grudge or not letting go. How do we deal with this reaction? So yes, this is a criticism by others. Like, why do you still remember it? The point is, Paresh, you don't have to remind people that you remember. I remember what you did in 2013. December 18th. I remember you don't have to keep on reminding it because then, yes, we haven't forgiven. It is more for your assessment so you know the details of what's happened. And you have a clear idea of the person's personality. Does that mean that that person stays the same? No, there is a chance that the person could have changed. And that's why in our assessment, it is important every now and then to do a fresh measurement. It means it's possible the person could have changed. So every now and then, just do a check, just see. So that past experience, no doubt, gives us information on the person, but we should give a fresh measurement, like not every day, but maybe after a year, a few years, check if they've changed. Because sincere people like yourselves, you are changing. What you are today is not what you were 5 years ago. So just keep some room for that. But we don't have to tell people that we are not forgetting. that we are remembering. So they will not have this perception then of you holding a grudge.
Sudhakar, if I may, you see, sometimes
Yes.
what happens is, as we have discussed before, when we meet those personalities and they have done certain things, without necessarily reminding them that you remember, you step back from an interaction, an association, a relationship even. You just sort of step back. And they read that as holding a grudge, while all we're doing by remembering and not excusing or reconciling is we are protecting ourselves from agitation. And a natural consequence of that is you step back. And that is what is picked up on, that why are you behaving like this? You have not necessarily reminded anybody of anything. So this is the reaction that we sometimes face when we step back. And that stepping back is a consequence of this wise Vedanta advice of forgive, but don't forget or excuse or reconcile. And that the consequence of that naturally is that you will step back.
Yes, exactly. When you say naturally, it should be intellectual. So it should be a decision. Yes, I've been in a similar situation. I don't want to put myself in the line of fire again. Now, when somebody questions that, this is where you've got to find out to what extent do you actually answer their question. Are they sincerely asking, where you could even explain, look, I've been in a situation like this, or I've been in here, and I'm rather on the side of caution. You can actually explain your thinking to that person. But suppose it's not somebody who really wants to understand. It's just somebody who wants to tell you how to live or give their opinion. Then you rather not explain. You rather say, no, and just, you can use Dario's excuse. I'm just feeling overstimulated this evening. So you don't have to explain everything to everyone. You can find something to just, so often people don't really want to know. They'll ask you the question, but they ask you the question out of just for a moment. It could be like, oh, I heard you were ill last week. How are you feeling now? Now, some people are genuine. You can give them your whole medical history. Most people just want to hear, oh, I'm feeling better. And they'll be great and move on. So we've got to use our intellect to discern who's the person worth putting effort for.
Yeah.
Astrid, what if you have assessed a person and you cannot change the fact that she always takes the whole place in a group, always talking about her and what she is doing? So there are many people like that. They just start. So it is preparing for that. So if you know you're going out with a group of friends and that person is going to be there, they can't help it. They have to be the center and they have to dominate the conversation. So one thing that you can do is, and it must not be out of irritation. It must be out of understanding. Like, that's the person's nature, what to do. Like they feel like they're not in the party unless they are the center of the party. And it may not be as conscious or as deliberate as wanting to be the center of the party. They just cannot help but talk about themselves. They really think it's so interesting. From our side, we can deflect it artfully, tactfully, in a way that they don't pick it up, that you're trying to take the stage away from them. But it could be like, and Dominic, what do you think? And Michelle, like what happened last year? And all you're doing is, by just doing that, it switches to the next person. So it's almost like you're moderating the conversation, but you've got to do it so casually. Otherwise, prepare for an evening with that person where you're going to hear a lot more about them. But nature will be nature.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Our
Yeah.
obligation
It's
is
not
to-
always easy when you are in a good relation with that person, when you are just she and me, and she's completely different when other people are there. And so it's I'm feeling sometimes agitated. It just passed today that I was before the group with a group of friends, and I could see how she changed, being with me only, and then suddenly coming more and more people, and she had
So this is good, because this adds complexity to assessment.
Mhm.
So assessment means, see, like when a person is alone with me, they behave like this. And we also do it. When we're in a group, we behave differently. In different groups, we behave differently. So our assessment has got to get more refined, more refined. So you have more information about the person. It's not that they're a different person. It means context changes, the person is different. So your understanding of the person gets layered. Just as your children, when they are with you alone, they behave a particular way with the parents. When they are with the siblings, they behave differently. They're not changing their personality. There's different desires at play. There's different complexes at play. When there's a group, when there are parents, and we just got to take that into account. So you're definitely on the way to understanding this friend better. I think that's it for this week. And we meet next week. Thank you, everybody. Have a good week. Hari Om.